Listen, I have like this really weird like relationship with my inner child. She literally just comes out whenever she wants, usually in times of stress where I felt safer. And that's like me pre-trauma. You know, I have PTSD, so that's like stress. Like there's already like chronic stress right there.
Welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free, safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Rennebaum, a suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. Hey, thanks for joining me today and for listening to another episode. This one is with Kitty, and she suffers from CPTSD, that is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And Kitty grew up with sibling abuse, and that's something that you don't hear very often, but I'm sure it happens all the time, or we just downplay it as, you know, siblings being siblings, but in fact it can be very traumatizing and disorder-inducing. So we discussed that. We discussed some of the symptoms of her CPTSD, including age regression and a few other things. And of course, like a lot of people that endure abuse, she then engaged in an abusive relationship. So we discuss all of that. And you don't want to miss it, especially if you can relate or you know someone that can relate. Don't forget that this episode will also be on YouTube at Bunny Hugs and Mental Health on that channel there. And on Thursdays, you can also listen to the podcast. And those episodes are called Mental Health Headline Hot Takes with Nick and Todd, with my co-host Nick Thompson from Love is Blind and from his podcast, Eyes Wide Open. And you can also see those on YouTube, on Nick's channel on YouTube, Eyes Wide Open. Quickly, I just want to say hello and thank you to all the new listeners that have been joining over the last few months here. It's been really great. It's been awesome, actually. And I appreciate all your messages and stuff and all your reviews. Please keep those coming. The ratings and the reviews are better than currency for podcasters. So if you're able to do that, that'd be great. And stay tuned for the weeks to come, because there's a whole bunch of really great guests coming up that I've already recorded with, including Carolyn from Survivor. If you're a Survivor fan, you'll know Carolyn. So that's all coming up. I always feel like I'm forgetting to say something that I'm supposed to be saying, but I also feel like I'm giving way too much information in the intros. But anyway, so about this episode, let's get into it. So without further ado, I give you Kitty.
My trauma started when I was usually it starts when you're a child. So it started, I think I was about 9 years old when my trauma started. And I kind of grew up in like an abusive household. Still live here, but it's gotten I guess better since I grew up. You know,
Was it your mother or father? Or
brother.
Brother.
Yeah, that's not the usual answer you get. Yeah, that's not the usual answer you get. But yeah, so there was a lot of violence in the house, and you know, I didn't realize that there were long-lasting effects to that until I got into a narcissistic relationship. And boom, everything starts appearing, all these triggers, all these issues, and of course, with the gaslighting, I'm thinking something's wrong with me. So I start like looking up, like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I have a therapist at this point, and as soon as I like eventually like get out of the relationship, she kind of introduces the concept of like complex PTSD to me, because I was experiencing all the symptoms, and I was like, okay, well, like this makes sense to me. I started reading like every article about CPTSD, and I was like, I relate to like everything here. I was like, this is me, like everything. I was like, okay.
What are those things for people that don't know symptoms or traits of CPTSD?
I have some written down in a notebook. Is it okay if I read?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You know, emotional dysregulation, distorted perception of the world, feeling very angry and distrustful, constant feelings of emptiness, hopelessness, feeling as if you are permanently damaged or worthless, feeling if you are completely different to other people, feeling like nobody understands you, avoiding friendships and relationships or finding them very difficult, dissociation, physical symptoms like accelerated heart rate, back pain, fatigue, emotional flashbacks, hypervigilance, nightmares, anxiety, panic attacks, blanks in your memory, avoidant behavior, procrastination, depression, alcohol and drug addictions, anger, a need for a savior, social isolation at times, risky self-destructive behaviors, foreshortened vision of the future, self-sabotage, harsh inner critic, overwhelming shame and guilt, being either very overcompliant or deviant, difficulty falling asleep or insomnia, and hypersensitivity to noise.
You just described me.
Oh!
Well, a lot of those are ADHD symptoms too, right? I mean, there's a lot of crossover and similarities and of all types of mental issues, I guess.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So that need for a savior.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so then you have a low kind of internal dialogue about yourself so that you become prime target or prime picking for a narcissistic relationship, I suppose.
Yeah. Yes. I would say, like, in my experience, because I've seen a lot of other people like in narcissistic relationships too, that the pattern typically is, you're someone with low self-esteem, lots of usually this is a person that's usually pretty traumatized, that's going to normalize the behavior. Sometimes
like the narcissist is traumatized, or the person.
It would be the person in the relationship, but the narcissist is usually also traumatized.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But you have also some people are, they have narcissistic parents. I don't personally, but I've seen a lot of people with narcissistic parents that end up in romantic narcissistic relationships. So yeah.
So what was some of the stuff that your brother was doing that created trauma?
It was a lot of physical abuse. Yeah.
Was he older?
Yes.
I'm assuming he doesn't live at home anymore?
I know he does.
Oh. So you used to live with this dude?
Yeah, but he's gotten better at, he's still not good at it, but he's better at, he doesn't get physical anymore.
Okay. Has he been diagnosed with anything?
He hasn't go to therapy, so, I have a few assumptions of myself, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. I know, okay, you're not a doctor, you don't know, but what do you suspect him of?
I think a few people have suspected that he had autism or something like that. So
possibly.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
yeah.
So
a lot of people would expect me to say a cluster B diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just based on the little bit of information you gave me, but
yeah. No, I'm pretty sure. He's not. It doesn't fit those. Yeah.
You don't take it personally now, because it's one thing if you. No, okay. You know what I mean? Do you find empathy? Do you find empathy in him and being like, oh, he's probably got autism or whatever, and if this is, just it's untreated, I can't take it personal.
I think that's a good question. It is a good question. Because with CPTSD, I also have trouble regulating my emotions, and I also get emotional flashbacks. So when you're in an environment with someone who's abused you in the past, it does come up, and there is a lot of projection, basically. So I've gotten a little bit better at it, but it does still come up. So
right, because you have gone to therapy and stuff, so maybe you can like separate yourself from the trauma a bit and be like, observe it.
I'm very like, when it happens, I'm very aware that it's happening and be like, I'm having an emotional flashback right now. Like, just I'll try to say to like anyone around me during this time, I'll be like, please, like, get away from me, like, because like right now is not a good time, like, please get away from me before it starts escalating. I'm like, just like, some people don't get the hint, but I keep telling them, I'm like, listen, if I tell you, like, get away from me, please, like, get away from me, because now it's just not, when something is triggered, it's like not a good time for any past abuser to be around you. It's like, nope.
I didn't mean to chuckle there. It's just, it's not a good time. It's okay. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I have a lot of friends with like complex trauma, and like I'm used to having conversations like this. So like I'm usually very comfortable, like, just, I don't want to say casually talking about it, but like I can have this conversation.
So why do you think your brother changed his behavior? Just he matured and became with age, or he saw that it was affecting you?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
It took place for like, I'd say maybe like 5-6 years, but I think it stopped around the time like he was about 20, I think. So yeah.
How much older is he than you?
He's about 3 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
I would say maybe age has to do with it.
Did you start fighting back? Was that part of it too? Or he was like, oh shit.
Of course, like I'm not, yeah. I think I've actually come across this very recently. I'm going to reference something, but I saw a post on Instagram one day, and I related to, and it said something along the lines of, there are some people in this world who have never been strangled by an older brother, and it really shows. And I was like, listen, I've like been through this, and like that's like really abusive, and like no one should have to go through that. And that was kind of like my response to that. And there were people in the comments like arguing against me. They were like, that's normal behavior. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that's so not normal.
Huh. See, I'm laughing because it was normal in my household. Yeah. I'm also 45 years old, so it's like, I don't know if it's a different time. It's just like, I mean, you always beat up, you always roughed up your siblings.
Yeah, I've heard that one. I've heard it before. I'd say like now is more of a time of like self-awareness. So now you understand like the effects of your behavior more than maybe you did like when you were a child. So now we understand it's like, oh, you can get PTSD from that. Like that's like serious like abuse. Because the brain interprets the trauma, right? So it's not like, maybe I might not take it personally, but my body's taking it personally, right? So now I'm traumatized. A lot of people were like fighting against my comment. We're like, oh, that's normal behavior. And I'm like, you know, you don't really get to decide.
Well, maybe it's normal, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I don't think you like, because you don't control how your brain responds to abuse, right? So it's like if you're getting a disorder from the way you were treated, I'd say there's something wrong with it.
I still grab my little sister's head and fart on her once in a while.
Oh my god. I've heard similar stories.
No,
I've actually heard that story before, so I actually believed it. I've heard stories like that before.
Oh, I've been farted on by my siblings.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that happens, I mean, I've heard.
Yeah. And I mean, there was bullying and pushing around and smacking around. Yeah. And I mean, I don't think I was ever choked or like, it didn't get too violent. It was, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's normal, but for me, it was just, and we call each other names and stuff.
Yeah, because that's your childhood, right? So you don't have anything else to compare it to. So it feels normal, but that's usually like what happens with like complex trauma survivors, is that like we think what's really traumatizing is normal because that was our environment growing up. And I have two parents that were raising me, and they saw the physical abuse, and they didn't do anything about it because they thought it was normal.
Do you have other siblings or
Just the one? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, and that's the same thing. My dad would tell us stories when he was younger about him and his siblings kicking the living shit out of each other and like knocking teeth out even and stuff. And so it's like,
yeah,
it was just boys being boys,
boys being boys. Yeah. Then I think you look back to like stories like that in the past with the knowledge you have today, and you're like, I wonder what kind of how this affected this person growing up or like in adulthood. Like,
yeah. I mean, I suppose in my therapy sessions I've brought up stuff like this before, so maybe it has affected me. Maybe it shouldn't be normal, but and also like when I look back at that stuff, it's also like, well, maybe they were maybe my dad and his brothers are going through something traumatic because of their dad, who was like in World War II when he was like 18 years old and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like this generational trauma plus.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, because if my parents like normalize the behavior, it's like, okay, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna normalize behavior? Like, no. Like, I see how it affected me. Like, it's gotta like stop somewhere. And I guess like nowadays we have that self-awareness to be like, okay, now I understand how like trauma, how abuse definitely carries on into adulthood. So now like you're more cautious about the way like you're raising children now.
Yeah, well, and now that I'm learning about ADHD, because I was just diagnosed not too long ago, it's like I look at my dad and uncles and I'm like, all their kids have been diagnosed with ADHD. So I'm assuming like, well, my dad and uncles probably had ADHD, but that wasn't a thing back then. And so they were going through like emotional dysregulation and all types of things too. So it's like also learned behavior, violence and flying off the handle quickly and stuff like that. So
I actually I spent some time in Poland this summer. I have family there on my dad's side, and I remember being like around them, like, I got cousins, nieces, nephews, uncles, aunts, whatever, big group family, and we would just be doing like, I remember one time we were like playing a game, and it was such like a natural and normal like thing, but I noticed that I was responding differently than everyone else. Like, everyone else was like really like healthy, and like we were playing like a memory game, and like I'm like, I scored lowest out of like everyone in the whole group. I was like, something's wrong. I almost started crying because I thought something was really wrong with me. Like, why am I the only one that's struggling with this? And like, I was playing against like a 10-year-old too, and I got beat. Okay, like that was like a hit to my ego, right? Like, I noticed I couldn't really do as well as everyone else, and I was like, yeah, that certain things show like that.
And so you think that's part of the CPTSD?
Yeah. It's like, I remember like I was complaining. Like, I remember one time we were playing bingo, and I was just like, I was like, stop, you're going too fast, don't, like, you're calling out the numbers too fast. And they were doing it in English too, and I was the only one who was foreign. Like, my main like language was English. Everyone else they knew it like foreignly, and they're like, we're not going that fast. Like, they understood it, and I was like, you're going too fast. And I guess like I just like my brain like just works slower, and like everyone else was fine, but I was having trouble, and I was like, that's how I know. I was like, yeah, it's me.
Have you ever suspected that you might be on the autistic spectrum?
No, I don't
autism
think
spectrum.
So. That's what it is. I don't think so. I mean, I feel like people get diagnosed with things like really late in life. So I mean, I don't think I am. I think that CPTSD explains a lot of the symptoms that I experienced since like childhood.
Right,
I feel like I have a good idea like what's going on. Yeah, I don't think that I fall into the autism spectrum. Yeah.
So what treatment is it? Just talk therapy? Is that what you use?
Yeah, I'm going through talk therapy with my therapist, and I've been doing that technically since it's been over 2 years technically, but I've had like really strong avoidant behaviors in the beginning. So it was hard to make progress when I'm constantly avoiding everything. So I would say like maybe over a year.
Okay.
I've been making progress, but yeah.
When I first started seeing a therapist for probably a year, maybe even the first 2 years, it was like I wasn't doing any of the actual work. I was seeing a therapist, but
exactly.
So technically,
it's like I'm just sitting. That's what I was doing too. I was just sitting there and talking, and that was it. I don't think I made any like for almost a year. I don't think I made any kind of like work on myself because I was just so avoidant. Like I just couldn't I spent like my whole childhood, like honestly even until like adulthood, until I was like 21, like just avoiding my feelings or like pretending like something didn't happen just to survive or something. And I just could not for the life in me even know how I was feeling about something. Like whenever someone would ask me how do you feel, I feel like I would like subconsciously like deflect. I'd be like, no, like we'll
Well, that's good that you're doing it because I didn't start being proactive until I was like in my mid 30s. So I mean, yeah, you're doing well.
Thank you.
How old are you now?
Thank you. 22.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. You're taking care of yourself. I know what I was going to ask. I was going to ask you about the age regression stuff. I read on your blog
that's right. That's a really good question. That is a very good question because most people don't know about it. I don't think. Quite frankly, I didn't even know that much about it either until like a few months ago. I remember describing what I was experiencing to a friend who's very self-aware as well. And I was like, listen, I have like this really weird like relationship with my inner child. She literally just comes out whenever she wants. I was like, I just act like a complete child sometimes. And I notice it happens, like, for me, I notice it happens more during the holiday season. I guess, like, my inner child wants to experience the happy memories that I was supposed to experience as a child. I guess I didn't, like, fully experience the childhood I was supposed to. So I feel like she comes out, and it's like, no, I'm age regressing to this time in my life, usually in times of stress where I felt safer. And if you read my blog post, so you know the way I described myself sometimes, I sound like I'm freaking 8 years old. That's like me pre-trauma. Like I don't know, because I did a lot of research on it, and like I learned that it was supposed to like come out during times of like stress, but I have PTSD, so that's like stress, like there's already like chronic stress right there. So I'm trying to figure out like any kind of like correlation to like where I experience these times from age regressing. I notice it's a little bit more prevalent during the holidays. I know it happened a lot during my abusive relationship. That definitely happened a lot. But yeah, I'm still trying to like figure out like when that gets triggered and stuff.
Huh. Interesting. Yes. You said you've only known this for about a few months. Was that because of your therapist or was it just your own research?
It was like I noticed that I was acting younger than I really was. Like I was flip-flopping, like even before I knew about CPTSD. I didn't know why it was happening. I just didn't understand it, but I knew it was happening. Like, I knew it was happening. I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was happening. When I became self-aware, like inner child stuff, it became like it made more sense. It became to make more sense to me. I had a conversation with a self-aware friend of mine, and she brought up the concept of age regression, and then I brought it up to my therapist, and she's like, yeah, and like, I was like, this makes sense. I remember my ex, he used to like get really annoyed whenever I would talk about like unicorns or rainbows or whatever. He's like, that's so annoying. Like, but he would get like really annoyed. Like he didn't like it. And I'll be like, I don't know why am I doing this? Like, I would do it, I could know that I was doing it, but I never knew why I was doing it. Now I understand that it's that coping mechanism.
Yeah.
For stress. Yeah.
And it's not like DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, where you actually like turn into your younger self.
Yeah.
It's just, you have these childlike behaviors. And like, I've been listening to a bit of Paris Hilton's story. And she's gone through a lot of abuse and trauma and stuff. And that's why she's like,
did she talk about age regression?
Kind of, yeah. I can't remember if that's exactly the term she called it or not, but it's like, that's why she likes like pink fluffy dresses and dogs, and she'll talk like a kid once in a while sometimes. It's like, that's hot. And it's because of this trauma.
Yeah. That makes me feel better, actually. A celebrity. Okay, I'm not alone.
Or even like Michael Jackson. I mean, he was a perpetual kid because of trauma and stuff. And and I relate. I mean, I want to put me in a room with a bunch of 17-year-old guys and girls, and it's like I relate to them better than I do people my own age. It's like, let's go for a bike ride and talk about fart jokes,
Like I noticed, for me personally, I relate most to like neurodivergence. Like I feel like I can't really connect to neurotypical people.
Well, that's another thing too, is neurodivergence. They say people that are neurodivergent are a little more childlike-ish, or they but again, more than one thing can create that trait, whether it's trauma or neurodivergence or whatever.
Introducing the timely children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. The visually stunning book is told through the eyes of a boy whose father suffers from depression. He sees his dad get sad, rest, and even go to the hospital, all while comparing his father's depression to a physical ailment. Sometimes Daddy Cries is getting rave reviews from parents and mental health professionals alike. One critic has stated, "This is a timely and important book that will help countless fathers and sons broach the subject of depression." An Amazon customer commented, "An excellent book to open up a conversation with a young child about depression in a parent. No big words, just a book about feelings." Sometimes Daddy Cries author Todd Rennebaum has personal experiences with anxiety, depression, and addiction. Sometimes Daddy Cries is available in hardcover and paperback on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com.
Today's episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is brought to you by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for about 25 years, I think. My co-op is one of more than 150 local independent cooperative associations in more than 600 communities across Western Canada. Co-op is a different kind of business. It's not just a gas bar or a grocery store, although co-op is those things too. At its core, co-op is a group of people working together to help their neighbors and build their community. Co-op members are owners, and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at coop.crs. Yeah, that's kind of why I asked, actually, if you thought maybe you were on the spectrum or something.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just grabbing at straws here.
Yeah, I'm fine.
So do you talk openly with your parents about this stuff now?
A little bit. Of course, there's like, boundaries around that kind of stuff, but because
your boundaries are theirs, or both? Okay.
I mean, if they want to set boundaries, I'll respect, but I'm focused on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have my own boundaries around that, but I do try to share a little bit, and then basically, like, I'll feel, how they respond, so I don't, like, get disappointed again. So it's like, I'll share a little bit, see how they respond to that, share a little bit, see how they respond to that.
Do they validate it, or are they kind of like, whatever?
It's like, sometimes it's like a mix of both. It's like, it sounds weird, but it's like, sometimes they will. Like, if they notice, like, I'm really distressed, like, they'll care, and, like, of course, they'll validate me. But, like, sometimes they'll just listen and not say anything. Sometimes they'll talk about, like, because I've had a conversation with my dad one time, and my dad had said, sometimes I feel like you're not, what was the word? Like, you're not grateful for, like, what we did for you, because you're always talking about, your trauma. And
so that helped.
Yeah. It was an interesting conversation, because, like, I do, like, fall back to this sometimes. I think about it. And I want to talk about it. It was, it's valid for me, because, like, I always want to validate other people's feelings, because I feel like when mine aren't validated, that's, like, my biggest trigger. So it's like, I feel empathy for that, because my dad was, like, working a lot when I was a child. Like, now he's retired and everything, but, like, when I was a child, like, I know he was, like, at work almost, like, a lot. He was at work a lot. So, like, he was really trying to provide for, like, me and my mom and my brother. But, like, at the same time, it's like, so when like, do you not want me to talk about this, like, at all? Like, well, what's the situation here? And I remember, like, I did this, like, experiment, and I had, like, taken a piece of printer paper, and I wrote on the paper, I wrote a few words. I'll tell you what they said after, and I put it up to his nose, and I said, can you tell me what it says on this paper? And he's like, no. And I said, how come? And he said, well, it's too close to my face. And then I said, okay. Like, I pulled it back, and then it said, you are too close. Those were the words. He said that he had felt ashamed that he didn't, like, really understand that I was being abused in my childhood. And I was like, this is why you can't see it. Like, it's right there in your face, and you can't see it. And it's like, do you know that, and I like using this example, but, like, do you know that, like, technically your eyes can see your nose, but they neglect it because it's too close to your face. Like, it's too close for you to see. So you, like, neglect it, you don't see it. Yeah, but you can go like that, you can see it, right? Right? But, like, like, you're not, like, looking at your nose, because it's, like, it's right there, right? So it's like,
interesting.
And you can't see a flag on it when it's facing you. You see it on the side. So, that's, like,
perspective
perspective is everything. Yeah.
So then you kind of validated his feelings, but also like broadened his perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I feel like that's always, like, my main focus. Like, whenever I'm having a relationship with anybody, literally, even if we're, like, in the mid, like, really going at it, like, that's the one thing I won't do. Like, I will not validate someone's feelings, because, like, that's one of the things that hurt me the most. And so, like, I will never do that to anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible just what a little validation will do to someone else. It's like, true. That's all anybody really wants. It's a little validation.
That's true. I definitely still crave it.
Oh God, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I validate that you crave validation.
Thank you.
Is that nice of me? Hey, see, now I need validation that was nice of me.
Thank you. That was nice of you to say.
Thank you. Hey, I have a little segment on my show.
Mm-hmm.
It's called That's Some Bunny Special. It's a segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health journey and helped fill your emotional tank. It's brought to you by Co-op. So,
Okay.
who in your life has been that person that is a go-to person that really lifts you up at times?
That's a good question. I mean, with the exception of like obviously my therapist, I will say I have a close friendship with
Satan.
No.
Oh, that would have been cool. Sorry, I don't know why I just did that.
That was just, I wasn't expecting, that's funny, but I wasn't expecting it. So I was like, wait, what?
Oh my God.
But I have a close friendship. My friend, her name is Alex, and like she's really helpful. Like she's very self-aware, she's very emotionally mature, and I love getting her perspective on things. Like she'll tell me as it is, and she'll validate my feelings just the way I need them. So yeah.
I was gonna ask if that was your friend that was very self-aware. What does she do for a living, or what is she inspiring?
And she's a writer as well.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Maybe,
okay, well that's good.
Yeah, maybe that's why we got along so well.
Huh. So it wasn't Satan.
No, not Satan.
Huh. Sorry, I think my mouth works faster than my brain sometimes. It was funny. I'm glad I said it still.
It was funny. I was like, wait, what?
Thank you, Satan.
Thank you. Best friends with Satan.
He's really been there. He's really self-aware and just
Satan's very self-aware.
Jesus. Okay, I gotta stop. Anyway, tell me a little more about your relationship that you had. Okay, was it the relationship you had was that person that diagnosed
No,
NPD,
but,
or just
you can tell. You can tell at times.
Can you?
I feel like you can tell. I also spoke to other NPDs about him, like several, and they're like, yeah. They're like, oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, so what were some of the things that he was doing that you kind of picked up on as maybe NPD behavior?
That's a really good question. Because I was so clueless for like a long time. Okay. One thing I will say before I get to like the nitty gritty stuff, but I remember throughout the relationship, I felt it so difficult to connect with him. Like it's like he'll talk about how he feels, like any kind of vulnerability he would show, I would just like not understand. I'd be like, why do you think that way? That makes like I've never heard anyone think that way. Like that makes no sense to me. Like I don't think that way. I just like I would almost like stare at him and be like, whenever he would be like vulnerable, because I was like I didn't have that kind of level of self-awareness at the time, so I would just kind of stare at him like, I don't understand why you think this way. Like it makes no sense. Or like
what?
I don't know. And she like. Honestly, sometimes now it's like, I noticed that maybe there's like a little bit of manipulation in that, and like I just couldn't relate to that. But it was also like constantly feeling like a victim was like one thing, like that perpetual victimhood, talking about how no one ever thanks him for all the stuff that he does for everyone, but he would always feel like he needed more validation or more approval or praise,
gratitude
or like,
shown to him.
Yeah. And I just like I didn't know victimhood was like the right word for it, but he would constantly talk about like how everyone does him wrong. And like it was like he was constantly living in this like fantasy that he was the victim, and I couldn't understand it. I just couldn't understand it at the time. And I just found it really difficult to like respond whenever he would go on to those monologues about how he's a victim. And I just couldn't understand it. But also, I think it was towards the end when like my mental health was like already like shit gone. Was like one time I was having an anxiety attack right in front of him, and he just kind of like, because he was raging at me at this time, and as the rage episode like progressed, and as I got like my body was shaking, I was like crying, like I'm profusely apologizing to him for whatever he claimed I did, and as the rage episode like progresses, he's kind of smiling like toward the end, and he's like it just gave him like a hit of energy or something. Like they call them energy vampires, but at the end he's just kind of like laughing or like just like he had a good time, and I was like, wow.
So he's maybe good close friends with Satan.
Yes, probably. All right. Whenever he would like get into like narcissistic rage, sometimes he would call himself Lucifer. So.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. So when you said Satan, I was like, oh, I know him.
So the other people that you know that with NPD that have the kind of opened your eyes a little bit to it.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they have been diagnosed and they're in treatment of it. So they're not, like we're just being goofy and saying they're Satan and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, people with NPD are suffering from trauma generally too. Course. And I mean, they're not having a good time with NPD generally.
Yeah, no, of course. What I like to like tell some people is that like, if I don't know if you're into like Greek mythology. No. But have you ever heard of the myth of Narcissus?
No.
No, you haven't. Okay.
Enlighten me.
Long story short, the guy, this narcissist, turns down a woman, breaks her heart, and then someone comes and curses him into falling in love with himself. And basically he sees his reflection in the lake and he drowns because he's too preoccupied with his delusions and falling in love with his mask, that he dies from drowning. And so what I sometimes tell people is that like a lot of people, when you first hear narcissist, you think someone who loves themselves, and it's like no, narcissist was a curse. It was supposed to be a curse. Yeah.
It's not like being vain where you like look at yourself in the mirror and being like, I look good. It's actually the opposite. It's like you were so you have such low self-esteem that you have to like put on this mask like you're like that almost, and it's actually very painful. And
of course, the way I describe it is, I mean, I'm sure this description has been used before, but it's a divorce of the true self, that when a narcissist is abused in childhood, that they feel so much shame that they need to divorce from their true self and create a false persona to show the world. And so they need all that validation, they need all that attention to feed what you call as the mask,
Right. And not that we're professionals or experts of this stuff. It's just we're just spewing the little bit of knowledge we've.
Two self-aware people just talking about mental illnesses that they know.
Right. So do you consider yourself a victim of abuse and being in a narcissistic relationship?
Well, I hate the word victim, but I would say maybe survivor better. But yeah,
I was trying to set a trap there, and you passed.
Oh, yay!
Because you said your boyfriend considered himself a victim with everything, so I was trying to see if you...
Yeah, I just like, that was, no, because I couldn't relate to it. I mean, maybe like a little at first, like after I got out of the relationship, I felt like a victim. But like after like a few months, I was like, oh, this is exhausting.
Yeah, it is exhausting being a victim. Because, I'm sure everybody at some point in their life has thought they were a victim. And then some people get stuck in that. And some people are like, yeah, it's not a good look. Like anytime I've felt that way, it's just like, okay, this isn't fun. Like it's time to be proactive, and like every side has two stories. Okay, so what was my side of it and whatever. And not saying that it's always 50-50. Sometimes it's 70-30 or whatever. But like, okay, I'm not a victim. I'm just going through life learning shit.
But you are responsible for correcting the things that attracted you to that person. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And and it's nice that you can actually you can have some empathy for that ex-boyfriend now that that paper's not too close. It's taken away a bit, and you'd be like, oh, this guy was just, he's suffering too, unfortunately.
Yeah. I feel like when I first got out of it, I was like really angry. So I was like, no, but
of course.
But then at another point, I was always like too empathetic. So then I need to like balance it out. I'm like,
exactly. All right. Balance. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah. Is he, has he found any treatment or anything? Do you know? Or do you keep in contact with him at all?
He's not getting any treatment. I'm not in contact with him, but I know he's not getting any treatment.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's too bad. Hopefully he finds his way before he becomes too miserable.
He's young too. So like, I don't know. Like as someone who was in a relationship, someone I cared about, like I do try to like remember like, hey, maybe in a few years, like he'll reach like a point, maybe, but not right now.
Man, I cringe thinking of how I behaved when I was 22. With girlfriends or other people, or just about myself and stuff.
It's completely different. Yeah, like I look at myself that way like 2 years ago. I'm like,
ew.
No, I would never do that now.
That's not hot.
No.
Do you think you kind of got any CPTSD from that relationship, or was more it triggered CPTSD from the abuse you had from your sibling?
That's a really good question, because I asked myself that. I think that my symptoms were present before, but they were like dormant. But also, I noticed that like my nightmares or my emotional flashbacks or whatever flashbacks I experience, they're about the relationship. So there's like, maybe it like got worse or because of like the relationship, but I did have like the foundation of the symptoms were kind of always there prior to the relationship.
Right. So yeah, it was more like a cake with icing, and the relationship was the sprinkles.
Exactly. There you go. Mm-hmm.
I like to think about cake. I'm curious how in 2 years you'll look back at your time now and be like, oh, and be like cringy all over again. Be like, oh, I was such an idiot. I know so much more now at 24.
Like 2 years ago, like I was just living in like, I refer to it as like a Duracell response, which is like your nervous system is living in a just go through the motions kind of thing. Right. So I felt for the longest time that I was not driving the car in my own life. Like I was sitting passenger seat the whole time. That's how I felt. I feel like that's what unawareness. I mean, that's how it felt like to me. But that's how it is, I think. And like now that I am self-aware, and now that I understand deeply that I am in complete control over like my behavior is that I'm less impulsive. I used to be kind of impulsive before. Now I'm less impulsive. I think more before I make an action, and there's that. So
you're in the driver's seat. You're checking your mirrors now.
Yeah.
You didn't check your mirrors before. Your shoulder checking.
What's funny is when I was unaware, I didn't have my driver's license, and now I do. So it's like it's almost like a literal sense too. It's like now I'm actually checking my mirrors.
Have you ever tried EMDR therapy?
No, I haven't, but I heard a few like good things about it, like from people with I heard someone with NPD try it out, and he said it was really good for processing trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just did it this fall, and I've talked to on the podcast lots of people that have done it, and I've talked to a lady who's an EMDR therapist on the podcast and stuff, and yeah, it's pretty. It's neat. A lot of people swear by it.
Yeah,
I think it helped me. It didn't hurt, that's for sure.
What? Yeah. What would you say that it helped you like the most with? Oh no, I'm the one getting interviewed, but
wait, whose podcast is this lady? No. I think it's helped me maybe move past some of my insecurities that these false belief systems that are so embedded in me that they're not even a belief system. It's just like your subconscious belief systems. Yeah. Just help me to kind of maybe have those go away, and just like the trauma is no longer like you said, almost like driving the car. It's now just something in the past that I drove past.
So do you
driving?
Oh my god, why am I asking questions now?
No, I don't mind.
Do you because you've mentioned that it sounded like I was describing you when I was talking about the CPTSD symptoms. So do you experience like emotional flashbacks in terms of like your trauma?
Yeah.
Yeah. So does
like
it
still
help?
You mean? Like after having the EMDR?
Yeah, because like the flashbacks is almost kind of like living in the past per se. So like
okay, so it's different. It's like I can still feel that emotion, but it doesn't. It's more like I observe it now, as opposed to like it, like crippling me or something. If that makes sense.
Okay, a little bit, yeah. Okay.
Or I'm almost grateful for it in a way. It's like, oh yeah, that's a shitty thing that happened to me, but it's like that's and it sucks, and then I can still feel that feeling, but it's made me the person I am today, and whatever, and I've moved past it, then that makes me feel good. So it's like you can still feel it. It's not like it doesn't delete it, but it's just your brain, it processes it differently, I guess. And yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about exactly.
One thing I do for my emotional flashbacks, and my therapist told me like this was a good thing for me, like when I first started complaining about how many emotional flashbacks I was having, is like sometimes I hit like a voice like audio like a memo, I click it and I'm like recording, because sometimes you want to scream when you're having an emotional flashback. I used to feel like really intensely, so like I would just go on a rant whenever I'm feeling those emotions. I would just go on a rant and I would record it, and then I would try to figure out like what exactly is bothering me. I would listen to it again and then try to figure out what exactly was bothering me.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you really wanted to touch on or talk about? Or
can I promote my Instagram?
Sure.
Okay, so my Instagram is Kit Catherine 2001, which is like Kit Kat the chocolate. Kit Catherine 2001. I'm really working on my identity after an abusive relationship, and I have like a blog that is attached where I explore certain topics that I'm interested in. So if anyone's watching this, I would love if you could follow or like look at the blog or whatever. So thank you.
Yeah, it's on her Instagram and it's in her link tree. There's links there and stuff. And it'll be in the show notes. So, yeah, there's that
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you, Kitty. You were very informative and vulnerable and adorable. So thank you so much for all of that. Hey, I forgot to mention in the intro, but it doesn't much matter because there's also the outro. I have a Buy Me a Coffee fund web page thing now. So instead of Patreon, I thought Buy Me a Coffee page would be nicer. So I'm a starving podcaster. I hate asking for money. It actually is something that I've been working on with a therapist. Yeah, this is hard for me. I have a page now called Buy Me a Coffee. It'll be in the show notes. You can go on there and send a few bucks if you feel so inclined to, and it would be super, super appreciated. And yeah, I don't know why it's so hard for me to ask. I'm not sure why it's so hard for me to do this. Yeah, anywho, there's that. If you have Instagram and you'd like to follow the podcast, that'd be great. It's at Bunny Hugs Podcast on Instagram. If you prefer Facebook, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health on Facebook. On TikTok, Bunny Hugs Podcast. And, again, I feel like I'm forgetting to say something. Well, I hope it wasn't important. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned. There's amazing episodes coming up, and there's amazing interviews that I have lined up that I haven't recorded yet. And I'm just so excited that there's so much great stuff happening. So until next time, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye. One thing I've learned through my experience with mental health and addictions is you never know what you need to hear until you hear it. Make sure to rate and review on Apple and to tell as many people as you can about the podcast so others can hear something they need to hear from one of my guests. After all, this is a free mental health service, which is a rare thing, so why not share with as many people as you can?